And we say, what's going on, everybody? Christian Ballard here at the Voice of College Football. This is Mississippi State Live Edition 7. I can't believe I've been doing 7 shows. And here the past couple weeks, we've had a great co host here in Andrew Miller. Andrew, what's going on, man?
None much. It's great to be back. Happy to have you back on the show. So I had to go solo last week, and by the end of it, I was starting to lose my voice a little bit. So glad to have both of us on, so we can have a little bit more of a back and forth talking about the Bulldogs today. And I'm really excited for this show because it should be fun to talk about the Mississippi State offense.
Yeah, I say I did 7. I've done about 5 or 6, and but either way, we've been here, and it's great to be back together this week. And the season's quickly approaching. There's a lot to talk about. I know off air, you and I have kind of texted back and forth about it, and there's a lot of stuff we want to hit on. So, yeah, today, let's just hit on the offense and, in a way, kind of go with it. But there's definitely some things that stand out.
Yeah, it's time to really start breaking down this team for the next season. So, over the next few weeks, we're going to be talking the offense. We'll talk the defense. I'm going to do a few episodes breaking down some of State's opponents for the season, and then obviously it'll come time to do our full predictions for the year. But I mean, look, it's August. It's already game month. We are just a few weeks away from previewing Mississippi State's Week 1 trip down to Hattiesburg. So, got a lot we got to get covered here in these final few weeks leading into the season. But wanted to start off with the side of the ball that I don't want to say everyone's most intrigued about. I think defensively, because of the questions, that's probably where most of the intrigue will be for State. But probably a lot of the excitement, a lot of the hype around this team is with the offense. There's a lot of optimism that this can be a really good unit. And optimism it can be an improved group from where they were a year ago. That's kind of one of the big things with Mississippi State going into year 2 with Lebby. Offensively, this was not a unit last year that was as good as a lot of people were hoping for. You look at Jeff Lebby's track record as a head coach and what he's been able to accomplish at various stops throughout his career. Pretty much everywhere he's been, offensively, they were able to make big-time impacts right away. They were very successful at UCF, very successful at Ole Miss, very successful at Oklahoma. And I think there was the hope that Mississippi State, even though it was a brand new starting 11 for the offense a year ago, I think there was one player who was not a transfer starting for the State offense last year, which it might have been 2, but it was just at least to start the year, which is quite crazy. But there was a lot of hope that you had brought in players who could make that thing click right away, just based on Lebby's track record. And we saw the spring game where you see the talent at receiver, Blake Shapen making big plays down the field, and just a lot of hope and optimism that this thing was really going to get rolling right away. And it didn't quite happen. It wasn't a bad year offensively. He averaged just under 26 points a game, which is, pretty mediocre these days, but it's not like god awful. From a total offense standpoint, 377 yards per game, which, again, pretty mediocre by today's standards. Although, I mean, offensive production has gone down some compared to prior years. But, from a run game standpoint, which is a big part of what this offense is, you just struggled really mightily early in the season, not being able to run the ball very effectively. That got better as the year went along, but it never reached a point to where they could truly lean on the run game as a huge part of what they were doing, the way that they like to within the system. And from a pass game standpoint, they were able to hit big plays, and they hit big plays in almost every single game that they played, but could not consistently throw the football the way you want to do. And look, Blake Shapen's injury plays a big role in that, right? You have him early in the season, and then you go to Michael Van Buren, which Van Buren handled things pretty well for State a year ago stepping in. I think he showed a lot of reason to be excited for his future. I wrote a piece on Maroon and White Nation kind of foolishly in hindsight that, hey, this guy's the future in Starkville. You see what it's going to be able to be. And he ends up hitting the portal just a few months later, and now he's hoping to be the future down in Baton Rouge instead. But he did kind of hit a wall as the season went along, and you realize, well, maybe if they had Shapen, things would have been a little bit better for that group in terms of consistency throughout the year. It's an offense that I kind of mentioned hit explosive plays. That's mostly true in the passing game. It was kind of true in the run game as well. They could hit big plays, but in terms of consistently moving the ball, they weren't able to do it. And it really kind of all goes back to the fact that their offensive line was just not great. It was 5 new starters up front a year ago, 4 of whom were transfers. Some transfers that on paper you looked at and it's like, okay, this is a pretty good pickup. He was a solid player at his previous stop. And those guys just never fully clicked together the way you needed it to. Run blocking was a big problem early in the season. Pass blocking was pretty bad all the way throughout. As run blocking progressed, pass blocking did not. And, we're going to talk about the line later in this episode. Big change there, both in terms of coaching staff and then also personnel-wise. But that was the group that kind of kept State from being able to be the consistent unit you were hoping for. I think there was a lot of hope from State fans that with what they would be offensively a year ago is this group that, hey, the defense might give up a ton of points, but we're going to score a bunch of points. We'll be in some fun shootouts, or we're going to get somebody because of it. The defense gave up a bunch of points. The offense could kind of do a few things to make games interesting here or there. They could not do enough to keep State in a 4-quarter game against anyone with a pulse, and were not able to do enough to spring an upset. And that's kind of why you end up as a 2-10 football team. So the hope is that going into year 2, you get more of what you're expecting. And it's a lot of new pieces. There's a lot. You had to go heavy in the portal for receiver. You had to go heavy in the portal for offensive line because a lot of I think offensive line was kind of out of a want, given how much that unit struggled a year ago. You felt like you had to upgrade the room. Receiver was a bit by necessity because you lost 3 of your top 4 guys from a year ago. So you had to go heavy there, but you add a piece at running back. You add some guys at tight end. And you also go and you add a quarterback as well. We'll talk about the quarterback position here in just a sec. But the big thing is that it's year 2 in the system. There's a lot more comfort. Even with a lot of new transfers, you do have some continuity. You've got guys who've been in the system. You have a quarterback in Blake Shapen who, even only playing 4 games a year ago, he knows this offense well now, and he's able to be someone who is comfortable. He's a veteran quarterback within this system, and I think he's going to be due for a big year. You have an outstanding running back returning in Devon Booth, as well as a good player in Johnny Daniels, and we'll talk about the transfers as we get into the positions. But just from a returning standpoint, you've got 3 offensive linemen who started games for you last season. You've got your starting tight end back. You've got 1 starting receiver back. So even though you had to bring a lot of new pieces in, you brought back guys who did good things for you a year ago. You've brought back guys who have been in this system. There's a lot of reason to think they're going to take a nice step forward.
Oh, absolutely. And you hit the nail on the head and mentioned a lot about the offensive line, which I kind of really looked into today because I think that's going to be a big key factor is can you hold up and help on your side uh shape and stay healthy. Obviously his health is the big question and he's got to do some things on his own, but the O-line could step it up a little bit. And I think despite, talent for the offensive line, it is the toughest to build in not just for Mississippi State. I think just in football in general, it's the toughest to build when you're dealing with inexperience. That's my personal opinion. Is it's the depth. There's new faces. The big question for me is have they done enough in recruiting and in the portal? Have they hit on that enough? And I think that in the portal they have, in the recruiting side of things, maybe a little bit, but maybe they could step that up more for the O line. I did look that they lost 8 guys on the O-line. They had 6 returning on the offensive line. There's a lot to be excited about, but inexperience and some freshmen. For example, they got this guy 58, TJ Lockhart, who played a little bit last year. I believe in like the UMass game. I think he played a little bit at
Yeah,
left
I don't know
guard,
if
but he hasn't
Lockhart's
he
going to be
hasn't
much.
been a start. He has not
Yeah.
been a starter though, but he has gotten some playing time, so they obviously trust him in a sense.
I don't know if he's going to be much of a contributor for them this year. But there's a couple guys around him that are also younger players. Luke
Right.
Work started 6 games for them a year ago. Jimothy Lewis is the one that everyone really excited to see. That was a blue chip recruit coming out of high school. Big frame, high athletic upside, but still kind of a raw talent who's going to need some development. There's hope that after redshirting as a freshman, that he's going to be able to step in and hopefully be a big part of that room. So yeah, I mean, O-line definitely. We're going to want to dive into that, but let's start at the top. Christian, I knew you were looking at State's quarterbacks. I mean, we know Blake Shapen and what he can be coming back off of injury. But there's a lot of talent in this room as well. But let's go through the quarterback room. Just what are your thoughts on this unit as we start the season?
Well, yeah, I mean, it starts with Shapen and his health, and then after that, I mean, everyone's kind of fighting for that backup spot a little bit, but I think it's clear cut. In my opinion, I would probably go. Uh, well, actually, I saw yesterday they officially named Cromenhoek from Florida State. I believe they did. They not name him the official backup.
I don't think there's been an official naming of a backup yet. I think that battle is still ongoing, from what I can understand.
Okay, I thought I had saw it somewhere. I could be wrong, and it could be misinformation there. But I think it probably should be an obvious choice that you go with him behind Shapen, and then after that, man, you just you you kind of build on the depth from there with uh
Kamario
I'm
Taylor.
drawing a blank. Kamario Taylor, yeah. Yeah, that's who I was thinking of. Thanks. I was drawing a blank on his name, but yeah, you basically just build the depth from there. This is Shapen's team. I think he has shown that at times that it can be his team and that it is his team. We talked a few weeks ago about the big concern is his health. And if he's not ready to go, Cromenhoek or somebody has to step up in his place. And you have to be ready and prepared uh, to take those chances.
Yeah, the depth is interesting. I do want to hit on Shapen, though, for a bit. I'm really optimistic about him, if he stays healthy, having a really nice season. I think, man, every time I turn on social media, I think most people have come around, and it's kind of a vocal minority type deal. But there's still a very strong segment of the fan base that is convinced State needs to make a move to, Kamario Taylor is kind of the name that everyone is really intrigued about because
Right.
of the potential there. And with shit, like I think there's a lot of people who look at Shapen and they just sort of like, well, he's the starting quarterback when you get blown out at home by Toledo. He's the starting quarterback when you get down big against Arizona State and you're back down big against Florida. So clearly, Blake Shapen is the problem in their eyes. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you Shapen played perfectly in all of those games. He had a terrible fumble against Arizona State. It was a dumb decision. He should have taken a sack. He tries to throw the football away. It turns into a defensive touchdown for Arizona State. That in a game you lose by 7 points, that was a pretty critical play. Now, if you take a sack there and you punt it away with the way State's defense was playing, I think Arizona State just goes down and scores either way. Probably doesn't make a difference when it's all said and done, but that is a defensive touchdown you gave up in a 7-point game.
Right.
The Florida the game against Florida, a lot of people have pointed out like the second play of the game, he had a touchdown open and he didn't see it, which that one's a little I don't blame him as much on that one because I do think his primary read was the dump off in front of him on this play. And I know I'm referencing a play that a lot of people are not going to just be able to remember. But that's one where I understand he didn't take the shot, but it was there, and if he had seen it open, that's a touchdown. Toledo, there were a few plays where he tries forcing the ball when he probably didn't need to. Also, Toledo's defense just played really well and just had State's offense as a whole really in a stranglehold that entire night with the game plan that they brought in. So, I think Shapen I'm not saying he's a perfect quarterback, but he gets painted as, well, because he's the starting quarterback in these games, clearly it's his fault. And I've gone back and I've watched all of this, and it's like, I don't know what Shapen is supposed to be doing when every time he drops back to throw, his offensive line is getting him killed.
Yeah.
And when they go to run the football, they have numbers to run the ball. They'll hand it off, and multiple offensive linemen just miss their blocks, and the run game goes nowhere. And this is an offense that really has to have its run game going to be successful. This is not the air raid. I need to hammer that point home. This is not an air raid system where they are just trying to spread it out and throw the ball constantly. And they're built around throwing the ball, no matter what, whether they run the ball or not. The way they go about throwing the football in this system is off of play action. It's off of RPOs. You need the run game to be effective for those things to be consistently effective. And just because of the way they play with spacing, the structure of everything, the run game is key in this system. And for Shapen's time as the quarterback, They were not running the ball effectively. Now, that Florida game, his final start, they started to find some success in the run game. That was probably their best rushing game of the year between the three running backs that they were playing at the time. Um, and you started to see the offense, I felt, clicked a little bit better, and Shapen was able to be a little bit more comfortable in that game. They got down big early, but there was a few missed opportunities in that game. That's an example of, I think, if you had him throughout the whole year, and you started to see, like I said, State ran the ball a little bit better as the year went along, which helped out a freshman in Michael Van Buren. I think it would have helped out Blake Shapen well, and he probably takes better advantage of it by having that run game to help him out as a veteran QB who's then going to better recognize when he can take advantage of the defense from a passing game standpoint. So I don't really blame him for the issues State had offensively in those first few games. And look, people don't like the taking sacks things. I think bothers people, but again, some of that just goes back to it. Some of it's protection, some of it you do have to get rid of the ball, but there's also some elements to just how the offense is structured that kind of puts the quarterbacks in those positions at times. I'm not trying to just get into a bunch of scheme talk here, but I kind of can't help it as I talk about the quarterback position and what the offense has to be able to do. All I'm getting at here is Shapen has displayed a lot of traits that I think are very good for this system. His ability to get the ball out quickly in the RPO game. I think he's accurate in the short to intermediate passing game, which is something that we did not get from Michael Van Buren a year ago. He's got a good enough arm to push the ball downfield and can be accurate on those deep balls. He has some mobility to his game to where if you need him to extend a play with his legs, you need him to go get a first down. You need him to keep it on his own read. He can do those things. Now, you're not going to want him doing a ton of that because of the injury concern, but he can use his legs as a part of what he's going to do. I think Blake Shapen is set up year two in this system, the comfort that he's in, with better protection in front of him, with a good group of skill talent around him, ideally a better run game to lean on. I think Shapen's going to flourish. And I really have high expectations for what he's going to be able to do this year. I understand people see the shiny new toy in Kamario Taylor and are excited for that. And look, to kind of get into the depth, I do think I will not at all be shocked if Cromenhawk is the backup. Like if situation of Shapen goes down, who do they turn to? I think they would go to Cromenhawk. I think if it's an extended period of time, like we saw a year ago, that's where I would not be shocked if they turned it over to Kamario Taylor because the kid is special. He's got raw talent and ability that you don't see a lot of, which I understand. That's why people want to see him. There was a picture going around from practice where you see Kamario Taylor, who's about 6'4". I think he's up to like 230 now. When he checked in at about 200 pounds at the start of camp, and he's put on that weight because he's put on the muscle, and he dwarfs everyone else in that quarterback room. Which, I mean, Cromenhawk's a pretty big guy himself, but like he dwarfs Shapen at least, and Shapen's not a big guy. And there's a lot of like, we want that guy at quarterback, and it's like I get it, I get the excitement. You got to go with the veteran hand right now, and I think that veteran hand is going to play really well for them. But if he does go down, I do think Cromenhawk is a capable backup, and I think Kamario Taylor is really exciting. There's a ton of talent in this quarterback room, and if they have to go to their depth, I think they'll be okay, whether it's Cromenhawk, whether it's Kamario Taylor. But I really like what Blake Shapen's able to do, and I think he's going to have a big year running this system.
No, I agree, and I think you hit the nail on the head, especially talking about the backups too, especially with Cromenhawk. Like, there's not um it's like I've been saying the past couple weeks, man. It starts with Shapen. There's not a wrong answer at who's the key go-to guy next, if it's Taylor or if it's Cromenhawk. But it seems as if that Kamario Taylor is going to be the guy there, and that's probably your best bet to roll the dice with, I would say. So, but yeah, no, I think I how do I want to put this in terms of like their quarterback depth? I don't think there's much to worry about. There's a little bit if you want to have some concern. We're not going to hype them up to be like Texas or Alabama or anything like that, obviously. But it's don't look at it either as, man, they're down bad at that position. I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, if there's any concern from the depth standpoint, I think it's purely the experience of the backups.
Hmm.
Kromenhoek made starts for Florida State last season. I think he started 2 games, played extensively in a few, in like he didn't redshirt, so he played. It was more than 4 games that he played a year ago. So he's got playing time, which certainly helps. And again, he's been a starting quarterback at the power conference level for Florida State a year ago. Um, but at the same time, he's still a sophomore and now stepping into a new system that he's not been in, so you don't have a ton of experience there. And then Kamaru Taylor, obviously true freshman, you just don't fully know. That would kind of be the only thing, is you don't have a backup in the room who's like been around, done this for a long time. But frankly, you don't get that in college football anymore. Those guys, they transfer and they go elsewhere. Um, so I think you kind of just have to bank on the talent that you have in the room. And I think you couldn't ask for more talent in that room right now than what you've got. It's a good situation to be in. I think that's going to be it's going to be one of the better rooms State has on the offense this year, because I think Shapen's going to have a big year, and I think he's got some really exciting players behind him. And I do think from a passing game standpoint, as now we'll get over to talk about the receivers and the tight ends here for a bit,
Yeah.
even though this is a run-based offense, as I kind of talked about, something Jeff Lebby has done is expand things a bit to have more diversity in the pass game. We didn't get to see a lot of that last year because I think, one, it's year one in the system, and two, especially once you go to a backup quarterback as a true freshman, you kind of got pretty limited in what they were able to do. I talked about this a couple episodes ago. They ran like 4 or 5 plays in the pass game throughout the season. With Shapen, they're going to be able to do a little bit more. And I think they've got receivers who will let them do a little bit more. I think you are going to see even as an offense, I do think we'll want to run the ball more consistently and effectively. I think from the passing game standpoint, they're going to be built to do a little bit more than maybe they did a year ago. So this is a really intriguing offense because of that. So talking about the pass catchers, you lose 3 of your top 4 guys from a year ago. Obviously, the big loss, Kevin Coleman Jr. Last year, 74 catches for 932 yards, 6 touchdowns, all of which led MSU's receivers. There was no one else who was even close in terms of receptions, yards, touchdowns. He was State's go-to guy. And, what made Craver so special in this room last year, as I've talked about, is he kind of did a little bit of everything from a receiver standpoint. We talk about guys who are dangerous in space, like, hey, get them the ball on a screen, on a jet sweep, and they can turn it into a big play. Or throw a quick hitch to them and they can, catch and run, turn it into a big play. We talk about guys who are good possession receivers. Like, hey, throw it to him over the middle of the field, and he's going to find a way to find the open space, get open. He's going to catch the ball. He's going to get you a first down. It can be that consistent chain mover. And then we talk about guys who are the explosive, shot plays down the field. Like, hey, one-on-one, he is going to burn the defender around him, and he's going to win deep.
Yeah.
Kevin Coleman did all 3 of those things. Kevin Coleman, I don't know if I've seen an MSU receiver in my time following the program that genuinely could do all 3, where he's great in space and with the quick, easy throws and turning them into big plays. He is great at just getting open and being that possession target and being that safety valve for the quarterback. He's also, they didn't use him as much in the vertical game because that's more what they did with the outside receivers. But when they wanted to, they took shots to Kevin Coleman and he hit big plays down the field. He was huge for State a year ago. And I think there was optimism he was going to have a good year. I don't think anybody thought it was going to be the season that he had. Yeah, really a lot of that excitement was around Kelly Akari, who, got injured early in the year, probably dampened him. But by the end of the season, he was playing pretty well for MSU on the outside. But losing Coleman is a massive blow. And my question for the receiver room is, did you replace Kevin Coleman? And is that even fair to ask? Now, what everyone will point to is that Kevin Coleman did not have the season that he had at MSU at any point prior in his career. He tripled his production from what he did at Louisville in 2023 to what he did at Mississippi State in 2024. It was a huge jump in production. And Jeff Lebby's track record is that everywhere he has been, he's had a receiver who puts up those big numbers. Often it's the slot guy. Not every year, but mostly it's been the slot guy for him outside of basically when he was at UCF. And at Oklahoma, Marvin Mims kind of played both slot and outside. He did both. So it's kind of like, okay, well, odds say somebody's going to do it. Odds say one of these receivers are going to do it. But we kind of don't know. And look, he's not the only loss. Kelly Akari was a good player for State. 391 yards, 25 catches, 2 touchdowns. Mario Craver, from a talent standpoint, in 9 games, 17 catches for 368 yards, 3 touchdowns. Now, there's reasons beyond production on the field that are why Craver is no longer at Mississippi State. Some of that is, he had NIL demands, but State was not willing to meet those NIL demands because of some of their concerns with him. And I'm not going to get into all that today. I don't think, basically what I'm getting at is I don't think State misses him, but he was an incredibly talented player. And assuming that he keeps his head on straight, I think he's going to have a big year at Texas A&M. He's a talented player who was a really good fit within the system. Significant losses. So you turn it over to a portal class where, man, you brought in a whole bunch of guys. When you talk about Brennan Thompson comes over from Oklahoma, Anthony Evans coming from Georgia, Aiden Williams from Ole Miss, Marcus Allen from Eastern Michigan, Cam Thompson from Northern Illinois, Jerron Glover from Michigan State. I mean, that's 6 transfer receivers right there, and they may or may not have had another. They brought in a lot of guys. And the theme with all these guys is potential over production. Every single one of these guys, you can see how they can fit into the system. And, okay, that guy is dangerous in space. That guy is a dangerous player down the field. We can work with that guy. We can have success fitting him into the system. None of them have done it. None of them have that type of production at their previous stops. How much of that is a reflection on them as a player versus the system that they were in? How much of that is we're going to be able to get, Jeff Lebby is just going to be able to take those guys and put them in a position to succeed. We got a comment from Pharrell, Lebby Nader Jr., time being expressed. I've wasted too many hours rewatching games from, by the way, I love that name.
Yeah.
Wasted too many hours off season rewatching games from last season and seeing MVB either rush to finish a play or just completely miss a receiver. How much better will Blake be? I think Blake will be better. I think the biggest place you will see Blake be more successful is in the short to intermediate passing game. I'll say this for MVB. For a true freshman, I thought his pocket presence was very good.
Right.
He did not have the immediate – a lot of true freshmen, it's like one read, and if it ain't there, I'm getting out of the pocket, trying to get to the edge, and maybe I'll keep my eyes downfield, but I'm probably trying to take off. He did a good job of stepping up into the pocket, and still you could see him working 1 to 2 to 3 across the field for his progression. A lot of freshmen don't do that, that's one of the things I looked at when I watched him. It's like, okay, this kid could be something. That said, I definitely get the point of he was not comfortable working the quick throws at all. You could just kind of see that his footwork was not there. The throwing motion looked really to the point of rushing to finish a play, kind of sped up. And he was just kind of inaccurate on those throws. I think deep balls, when he was comfortable, he was pretty settled in. I think Shapen opens up more, all 3 levels of the passing game. Shapen allows you to do that more consistently. Now, I will say Shapen, if there's a flaw in his game, it's sometimes he tries to create when he doesn't need to. There is some pocket stuff with him that's not the best. But I think in terms of being able to operate a full-scale passing game, you can do more with Shapen because of that. But he's also got to have the receivers to do it. You've got to have receivers who can handle those roles. So getting back into talking about those receivers, again, the potential is there. It's whether or not the production can be there for these guys. Can Jeff Lebby get the most out of this room? And I think you have guys who can be successful. I talked about a couple episodes ago when we looked at talked about media days and Anthony Evans and how Blake Shapen called him out as hey, that's a guy I think is going to be a huge part of what we do offensively this coming season. And we just got a highlight out of practice of him hitting Evans deep down the field. That's a guy that if he can do that, that's huge for you. Having a guy who's in that slot position, which has thrived for Lebby teams in the past, that's massive if he can be that player. We know he's going to be good taking screen passes. We know he's going to be good if you want to get him on a jet sweep. And it will be funny to see if State runs a lot more jet sweeps this year because there was so much. Oklahoma fans called him Jet Lebby because he called a ton of jet sweeps to his receivers during his time. And when he got hired, it was every OU fan on Twitter was just making a bunch of these jokes about, yeah, have fun seeing a million jet sweeps a game, which, by the way, Oklahoma fans, look what happened to your offense after you lost Jeff Lebby. So have fun with that. But he didn't run a ton of jet sweeps at Mississippi State. He ran a few, but they didn't do it a ton.
Yeah.
From dime time, part of that part of that was definitely in part of the O-line being iffy. I agree. It was just some frustrating to see him miss some third and shorts. Could have won us game. New subscriber from Bay St. Louis. Love the content. Thank you so much. Down on the coast. I am on the coast as
Thank
well.
you.
Representing Gulfport. So shout out to
Let's
Dime Time.
go.
Got a couple coasties down here. I
All
love
right.
it. Thanks for being a subscriber. Really appreciate that, man. And
Yeah.
look forward to
He
having.
hits he kind of hit the nail on the head though too with this comment, and you and I have talked about it the last couple of weeks with the O line is iffy, and we had kind of talked at the beginning of the show about the offensive line a little bit. Um, there's a lot of good guys with potential, but as a unit, they got to really step up and put it together to put on. It doesn't have to be like the best in the SEC. It doesn't have to be, but you got to give Shapen some room to be himself out there to where he's not risking his life every single play.
100%. They're going to have to protect him better. That'll be a huge part of it is getting that pass protection. I think how you evolve the run game will help with that. And we're going to talk about the running backs here in just a minute. So
Right.
we'll be able to hit on that there. Just getting back to talking the receivers again. Anthony Evans, there's that excitement of him being a guy that they can utilize again, kind of as a gadget type player, being able to get in the ball on screens, on little quick passes and letting him go to work. But can he be that possession receiver that Kevin Coleman was? That was kind of the big thing. I think, okay, we see his ability to get downfield based on a highlight on Twitter, which how much stock do you take in that? I don't know. But they think he's a guy who's got the ability to get downfield. We see what he can do as a guy in the short part of the field. Can he handle that Kevin Coleman role of being a consistent, hey, it's 3rd and 7. We have to convert here. Who's going to get open? Who's going to find the open space? Who's going to catch the football? That's going to be kind of the question for him. You add in Brennan Thompson, who there's a ton of excitement around. And, he was just listed on Bruce Feldman's freaks list because of the speed that he has. And he might be one of the fastest players in college football. Absolutely blazing speed, ability to win downfield. Can he be more than that? Because at Oklahoma, he was a deep threat. Like, that was kind of it. Can he be more than just a big vertical threat down the field? Dime Time coming in. Hell yeah, Coast Love. Don't mean to interrupt the wide receiver conversation, but if y'all were to come up to Starkville for one game, what game would y'all pick? Ooh. Trying to think.
Let me double check that. What are the let's see.
Well, I know I'm coming at it from perspective. The Tennessee game, that would be my answer. Tennessee game for sure. I think that's going to be a really fun atmosphere for State early in the season. That's a big opportunity. I mean, I guess the Egg Bowl is always an easy answer. Frankly, from a weather standpoint, the Egg Bowl would be my answer because I hate the heat. I want it to be cool outside, preferably cold outside. So Black Friday, I'll take that. But from a game standpoint, I think that Tennessee game is going to be really exciting. But yeah, thanks.
That's a good question too. There's a couple good games to choose from.
High profile
You
opponents
mentioned the
coming to
Tennessee.
Starkville this year.
What's that?
High profile opponents coming to Starkville this year. You have 4 playoff
Tennessee. Yeah, Tennessee, Texas, Georgia, Ole Miss, Arizona State. I'd love to check out the Egg Bowl. Like, I think I'm a little bit biased because of how much I value rivals. But if I had to pick outside of that, like I don't know, Georgia or Texas, just to see that atmosphere with those fan bases getting together, and then it'd be cool to maybe if I'm on the sidelines or something, and just kind of you know that those are the games you want to see State compete in.
You certainly. My concern there is I don't know how much State's going to be able to compete, so that's kind of why I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Why
I agree with you. I'm just saying, like, do something. Like, can they do anything against those teams?
Right. Back to Brennan Thompson. Like again, can he be someone who is more than just a vertical threat down the field? That's kind of the big
Mhm.
thing that you're asking. And to be fair, outside receivers in this offense kind of it's either win vertical or run a comeback. That's kind of what they do play by play basis. But you want to see it from him. Aiden Williams, another guy on the outside. All the excitement in the world based on what he did in practices through 2 seasons in Oxford, what he did in spring practices for Mississippi State this year. All of the practice talent and tape is there that show a guy who can be a really exciting player. He has not done anything on the field. Now, he was in a loaded receiver room at Ole Miss. But for what it's worth, a guy who came in the same year as him, Caden Lee, got on the field for Ole Miss plenty last year and is going to be one of their top receivers this season. Now, they play different spots. Caden Lee is a slot. Uh, Aiden Williams is an outside receiver. So, that kind of plays a little bit of a role there. But still, Levy is willing to put young guys on the – not Levy. Kiffin was willing to put a young guy on the field. So it's not just a product of having good receivers in the room already. Does the change of scenery lead to a breakout season for Aiden Williams? If he does, the talent is there. The guy can be a big-time player for sure. Other transfers, I don't know how much you're going to get from guys like Teron Glover. We really have not heard much about Cam Thompson at all outside of being a kick returner. Marcus Allen's interesting, and it sounds like that's a guy who could factor in a little bit more. There are a couple returners, though, that on the returnees, not returners, but returnees on the team that are interesting. Jordan Mosley, last year was State's second leading receiver in terms of yards, 405 yards, caught 3 touchdowns. I thought he kind of had an underrated good season a year ago. So, what type of role can he play this season? Can he expand upon that and be an even bigger part of the offense? Ricky Johnson, as a redshirt freshman in the slot, is someone that there was a ton of excitement around during the spring, and he had a very good spring. Can he put that on the field? The players are there. They have guys that they can have success with. It's just finding out if any one of those guys can really expand their role. Now, if at the least you have guys who can all play a role and you put all those guys in the field together, you got something to work with there. And before we end here, we do have to talk about the tight end room. I think Seydou Traore at tight end is going to be due for a really big year. I like
Yeah.
what he offers for State as a receiving threat over the middle of the field. Jeff Levy has utilized his tight ends in the passing game before. Kenny Yeboah at Ole Miss was one of those guys. Braden Willis at OU is the one I look at with Traore and think some of the stuff Levy did with Braden Willis you can do with Traore. And he did some of it a year ago, but that was a guy that he kind of looked for matchups with. And he wasn't just a check down option, it wasn't just a guy we're throwing to the flats, which you get a lot of the time with the tight end. He made Braden Willis a priority target within that offense. I think you can do the same thing with Seydou Traore. I think his receiving ability at the tight end position, which frankly, he's a big receiver. He is not a true tight end. He's very much a big receiver. But I think he gives you a guy that can be a really, really big pass catcher for you. And, he was second on the team in receptions a year ago. I think Shapen is going to be able to – we talk about that short to intermediate passing game. That was a struggle for Michael Van Buren a year ago. Shapen can thrive there, and I think that really benefits a guy in Seydou Traore. And this whole discussion of, is there a guy who can kind of be that go-to target that you can reliably say, get him the foot? He's going to get open on third down, catch the ball, convert. It might be Traore. And, look, they added a couple more guys in the room. Max Reese from Eastern Michigan, who's another good receiving threat. Sam West from Indiana sounds like he's showing some flashes here in camp since getting in. We'll see what happens with Cameron Ball, who at 6'7", 250 fits the mold of a big-time, kind of a bruiser, which they need better blocking from the tight end position. Kind of getting into the run game. You need guys who can add more there because Traore is not a big-time blocker. They've got some interesting pieces there in that tight end room, but even purely from a receiving standpoint, I think they've got a guy who can really thrive. We've done all this talk about the receiving when early in the show I was talking about the run game being a key part of making this offense really go. And Christian, this running back room is really exciting.
Yeah, there's a lot of exciting positions, but I think the running back position is probably one of the more interesting ones and really not talked too much about, which, I know we are kind of in a wide receiver type of era today, but um I would say I My first question is this. It starts with Davon Booth, right? Like, no doubt he's going to be the starting guy. And
Yeah, I
if
will
he's
say
healthy.
kind of running back by committee, but
Okay.
Booth, like, there's too many mouths to feed that are talented that they're going to not put him on the field. And they rotated bodies a year ago. Levy, most of his career, has rotated bodies at running back. Ole Miss, it was
Right.
running back by committee. Second year at Oklahoma, running back by committee. So I think it's going to be that way. But in terms of who's number one in the room, who's going to get the most of the touches, it's Devon Booth.
For sure. And they have a couple guys behind him. Um, reason to be optimistic are two key players, but one of them being a transfer actually from South Alabama, Fluff Bothwell is a South Alabama transfer. He had 11 or 111 carries for 832 yards and 13 touchdowns last year and averaged about 7.5 a carry. That's quite a bit of yardage there when you're getting the ball a lot. And obviously, 111 carries for South Alabama's running back. I mean, they obviously saw potential in him to feed him that much last year. And it'll be interesting to see how they work him in there, kind of rotate some guys behind Devon Booth. They also got Johnny Daniels, who's a senior now. He did have 4 rushing touchdowns in 2024 with 540 on the ground and 108 carries. So I think there's a lot of potential there behind Booth. And I don't think it's a position you really need to worry about. We talk about the offensive line. Um, not to jump too far ahead, but I feel like the offensive line depth is a reason to be concerned with the offense this year. If it holds up, I say, you know, you do what you can for Shapen to open up the pass game, but also don't be afraid to let these guys run loose.
Yeah, this running back room, I think, can be really, really good.
Yeah.
I think Devon Booth is one of the most underrated players in the SEC entering the season. Uh, you know, there was a top 10 running back list the other day that didn't have him on it for the SEC, and listening to like the explanation, like there were other running backs that got mentioned for it, and he didn't even come up as a possibility. And I thought that's crazy when you look at like what he did this past year. Didn't get any
Yeah.
preseason All SEC love, and I understand it. Like if you want to say the 6 running backs who were selected to the preseason All SEC teams, you have them ahead of Booth. Fine, I think you could justify any one of those guys. But from an all-purpose player's perspective, keep in mind, Devon Booth was all SEC as an all-purpose player a year ago. He had over 1,000 all-purpose yards. I think it was 10 all-purpose touchdowns, and he was earned all SEC honors. And then preseason, he doesn't get it, and you have a transfer in Zachariah Branch who's still living off of 2 games that he did 2 seasons ago as a true freshman and hasn't really done anything since at USC. Now he's at Georgia. Xavier Thomas at LSU. I know I'm going to sound like a hater because he left Mississippi State for LSU. That guy averaged 2.5 offensive touches for LSU a game last year and scored 1 offensive touchdown. I think he had 1 kick return touchdown in their bowl game. That is not an all SEC, all conference player or all purpose player. That's not an all conference player at any spot. Like Devon Booth is more impactful. And, the other guys at Florida, I think those are actually better players, but I don't know about them as all purpose guys. Like, I don't know how Devon Booth, who with what he did as a running back and as a pass catcher out of the back a season ago, adding some ability in the kick return game. He didn't have any touchdowns, but he had some nice long returns. The guy's too dynamic a player for him to be passed up by some of the guys who were listed. Like, I think
Right.
he is going to have a really huge year. And yes, it's running back by committee, but I think we're going – I do think – because it's funny we're talking about all the passing game stuff. I do think they're going to be able to run the ball more this year than they did a season ago. I think even if they are, I think they're going to throw the ball more too. I think they're going to run more plays. Last season, they did not have many plays per game relative to what you typically see from a Levy team because they had so many offensive drives where they were 3 and out or, run a couple plays punt, run a couple plays turnover. When they did score, it was off of explosive plays. So they weren't putting together longer drives. And this is a quick strike offense, but they didn't keep the ball consistently. Even the other part to that is they had to throw the ball to play catch up. Half their games last season, like they got down big. Even some
Yeah.
of the games where they were competitive with, like you look at the final score, Georgia 41 to 31. It's like, wow, State played really well in Athens, and they did. They were down like I think it was 34-10 in that game.
Mhm.
Like if against Florida, they got down by I think 3 scores at one point. They got down big against Toledo. They were down 30-3 at Arizona State. When you're down like that, you're going to throw the ball to get back into it. So the rushing attempts were not there. And I say all this to say, like, even adding another mouth to feed, like they're going to have more rushing attempts this year because I think they're going to be more consistent moving the football. So I think Devon Booth is going to have more opportunities, even with another player there in the backfield and Fluff Bothwell. I also think Bothwell, for as good as he is, mostly going to be kind of the short yardage guy for State. I think he's, 5'10", 230. Like he is a
Mhm.
bruiser. He is a downhill between the tackles. We need him in short yardage. We need him on goal to go, which that was an issue for State last year. That was part of their issues with the run game last season, is they couldn't convert in those spots. But Bothwell, I think is mainly going to play that role. I think Booth is the guy when they're just trying to move the ball between the 50s, or sorry, between the 20s. It's going to Devon Booth. Now Johnny Daniels as well is going to get touches, and I liked what you saw from him a year ago. Xavier Gayden is very interesting as a sophomore. Last year, only 8 carries, but 115 yards and a touchdown. Every time he touched the ball, it was a big play last season. Like that's a guy who's a really exciting player for State for the future. Um, those are 4 running backs who, if you told me like that's the lead back in any given week for State, I'm perfectly fine with that. Like I think all of those guys can thrive and have big years. I think you've got a really, really talented room who are going to be featured. I think at least with Booth, and also I think with Booth and Gayden, I can see Levy finding some interesting ways to get them the football because of the explosive ability that they have to offer. Again, I think Bothwell gives you that short yardage ability. I think Daniel's just a good, consistent back from dime time. Easy 1,000 plus rushing receiving yards for Booth. I'm right there with you. I think last year he
Yeah.
wasn't there. He had to have the kick return yards mixed in to get over 1,000. I think it'll be from offense this year. Also thinking 500 plus each rush for Daniels and Fluff. I could see it. Let's throw it in Gayden return touchdown somewhere in there. I'm interested to see how they get Gayden involved. That's definitely could be a kick return guy that you get more of going this season. But that is a really, really talented group that they're going to be able to build around. I think Levy's going to be able to do some interesting things with them. Last year, Mississippi State, from a rushing success rate standpoint, it was about 40%, which was the
Mhm.
worst that Levy has had as a play caller. You want to get let me look at his previous seasons and where they had been before. So 2024 Mississippi State had a 40.1% success rate. They were kind of in success rate for those who don't know. It's basically the percentage of your play. Yeah, it's how many plays are deemed successful. I mean, but it's judged on how much yardage you get relative to the down and distance. How much percentage of the yards to gain did you get relative to down and distance? So, like the quick math, it's 50% of the yards to gain on first down, 75% of the yards to gain on second down, 100% of the yards to gain on third or fourth down, and then any touchdown run. Those are all deemed successful plays. So MSU's success rate was 40% last year. 2023 at Oklahoma, 48%. 2022 at Oklahoma, 50%. 2021 at Ole Miss, 47%. 2020 at Ole Miss, 45%. And then 45.5 at UCF in 2019. So at least 5 percentage points lower for every single one of those from a success rate standpoint. They hit some big plays in the run game, but they couldn't consistently move the chains. And a lot of that goes back to the offensive line, as we're going to get to here in just a second. The offensive line was not good enough for State up front. But I do think they will have improved blocking. I do think the fact that they were able to find some success running the football a year ago behind an offensive line that wasn't great speaks to the talent they had at running back. They've only improved that talent. Fluff Bothwell is another very good piece in that room.
Mhm.
I think they're going to be better up front. I think they got more talent at running back. I think this run game could be really dynamic for Mississippi State, and it could be really exciting part of the offense.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch the run game, man. And it's funny because we're in an offensive era where you see a lot of the run game still with everybody out there. Like Alabama still runs it, Georgia still runs it. They can put backs in the NFL and stuff. you see more of it being about wide receiver and quarterback play. And that's huge for Mississippi State this year too. I like I said, and I think you kind of said that too. Don't be afraid to just feed the backs. Don't be afraid to do that. Give them a chance. And as long as that O line holds up, I don't see why you can't have 1,000-yard rusher out of really almost anybody out there, man. Because I mean, they really are fast and talented on that football field.
Yeah, I don't know if there will be 1,000-yard rusher just because they're splitting up the carries. Again, 1,000
Right.
all-purpose yards for Booth. Like I think between rushing and receiving, Booth will have over 1,000 yards of offense. But well, do you have a guy who rushes for 1,000 on his own? Probably not. But I do
Right.
think it's going to be a group. I think this team can get up as a team. They ran for like 137 yards a game last season, which I mean, I literally have it in front of me. Yeah, 138 yards a game last season. I think they could get up close to 200 yards a game this year with what they're doing in the run
Yeah.
game. And if you're doing that, and look, the run game is starting to come back a little bit in college football. Defenses have started to catch on a little bit to just the wide open spread passing. You're starting to see teams get back to more physical football a little bit more. Now, this is still a spread attack for sure with what they want to do. But I do definitely think Levy wants to get more physical in the run game. I think adding Bothwell from a physicality standpoint shows that. I think what they did for the offensive line upgrades shows that. I think what they did from the tight end upgrades shows that with some of the guys added in the room who could help you block a little bit better. But definitely also going to come down to what you're able to do up front. But if this group gets a little bit better blocking, I think you're looking at a really dynamic rushing attack. To kind of close out the positional previews for this episode, the offensive line, and you've said it several times now, that's kind of your question for this group, and I would agree. It is the question for Mississippi State offensively overall. The run game. Oh, sorry, not the run game, the offensive line. You brought in a bunch of transfers. You have 3 guys back who were started at least 6 games a year ago between Luke Work, Jacoby Jackson, and Albert Reese. You added 5 transfers in the post-spring window. 2 of those guys, Blake Steen, really 3 of those guys are firmly in the mix to compete for starting jobs with Blake Steen, Brennan Smith, and Zach Owens. You have another transfer in Kobe Keenum at center, who's very much in the mix to be a starting for you this year. Jimothy Lewis, I talked about him earlier. As a redshirt freshman, there's a ton of hype. Can he be a breakout player? Camden Boone, sort of a veteran guy on the roster. Can he factor in and be one of the guys who starts for you up front? You've got a lot more options this year. And there are several other guys after that. Depth for offensive line was a massive concern a season ago. I think they addressed that in the portal. They've brought in a lot of bodies. They have more size in the room. You can tell a difference between what they were trotting out there a year ago and the guys they have this year. They are bigger in the trenches. They are bigger and stronger up front. Do you have 5 guys who can play? That's the thing. Do we have 5 guys we can form a solid starting lineup? I do not need a group. I do not need the Joe Moore award-winning offensive line. I don't need an offensive line of all SEC players. I don't need an offensive line of all Americans. Do I have 5 guys who can reasonably play? That's kind of the question, because they didn't have it a year ago. Last season, they did not have that. That is the root cause of everything they had issues with offensively a season ago, was that the offensive line was not strong enough for them. Do you have the guys in there to be better? Obviously, it's not just a personnel thing. It's a coaching thing as well. You go and you bring in Phil Lodeholt as offensive line coach. You move away from Cody Kennedy, who his 1 year didn't go the way that you wanted it to. Phil Lodeholt is familiar with Jeff Lebby, having coached with him at UCF and at Oklahoma. He has shown his chops on the recruiting trail, done really well with the portal and at the high school ranks. And he is someone that in his 1 year at Colorado, their offensive line got noticeably better, at least from a pass protection standpoint, which is such a big thing for State. As bad as they were in pass protection a year ago, they need to be better in that standpoint. And yes, I know people will say, well, Shadur still got sacked a ton last year. I know I said this a couple of weeks ago. A lot of those sacks on Shadur were on Shadur because he had a tendency to hold on to the football for a very long time. And I'm not saying that to dunk on him. I hope he goes on to have a great NFL career. It doesn't really matter to me one way or another. I'm just saying, like, that's a lot of the sacks Colorado gave up last year fell back on the quarterback. and it was not nearly as bad as it had been 2 seasons ago before Lode Holt got there. In theory, you have upgraded an offensive line coach. In theory, you have upgraded you've 100% updated your depth. In theory, you've upgraded your talent. You've 100% upgraded from a continuity standpoint because, like I said, you've got 3 guys back who started for you a year ago, plus another in Cannon Boone who played a good bit of snaps for State. You've got some continuity, you got depth, you got better talent, better coaching. This should be a better room. The questions really become, who are the 5? It's at center. It's like a 3-way battle between Kobe Keenum, Brendan Smith, the UTEP transfer, and Cannon Boone. Any of those guys could end up winning that job. At tackle, you have a lot of options. Do you keep Albert Reese at tackle where he started a year ago? Does Blake Steen finish your starting right tackle after transferring in after the spring? Does Luke Work hold on to a starting tackle spot? Does Jimothy Lewis finally take over one of those spots? You got a lot of options there. At guard, does Jacoby Jackson hold on to a starting spot? What about Zach Owens stepping in? Between Keenum and Cannon Boone, one of those guys could play guard. Luke Work could play guard. Albert Reese could also play guard. There's a lot of ways they could have this thing shape out. They've given themselves options. It really boils down to whether or not you have a guy that can be, whether or not you have 5 guys that can be a consistent starter. Are we buying into the flapjack hype? So that's Zach Owens. His name's coming up a lot. I'll say that. And if you were telling me that a guy who's 340 pounds is going to be anchoring one of the starting guard spots, all right. You didn't have that a year ago. If you want more protection on the interior, that'd be big. Obviously, we know the guy has talent. Simon Clemson out of high school, highly rated recruit. Now it's kind of his 3rd year of college. Now's the point he has to show it. But I think Flapjack Owens could definitely play a role. Again, State's got options. It's a matter of, do you have 5 guys that they can trust?
And, they have brought in, and you can correct me on this, but in my notes, I had that they had brought in 5 guys from the portal.
That was
I know they brought in.
post-spring.
That was
That's just after
post-spring.
the spring.
Okay. Well, they still have those guys, pretty much. They have, you mentioned Zach Owens comes from Colorado. Blake Steen is a guy from Virginia.
Yeah.
Jaquan Bolden from Purdue. Javen James, Akron. Brennan Smith is from Austin Peay. So,
Brennan Smith was at UTEP last year. He started his career at Austin Peay. He was at UTEP. Javen James was at Akron last season, and then he was at Maryland in the winter, but then got back in the portal and came to State. But, he was playing at Akron a year ago. But the other guys that transferred, Kobe Keenum comes from Kentucky. Trevor Mayberry comes from Stanford. I think those are the only other 2, so I think it's 7 total. They had 2 other transfers, Carson Lee and I'm blanking on one kid's name, Jesse Rammel. Those were winter portal transfers. They are both back in the portal at other programs now, which those were kind of the type of transfers out of, hey, we saw you come in. We think you probably need to go someplace else and play if you're going to play. That's what those moves were.
Okay. Yeah. And then one thing I wanted to point out, Jacoby Jackson comes back, Albert Reese, and Luke Work. There are 3 those are 3 key players I've read up on that saw great playing time last season. You need 5 guys to build a line. So I guess my question is, you only have so many transfers you can go with to put as starters. So, is there really a right or wrong answer there?
There could be a wrong answer. I will say, interested to see what Christian's unbiased record prediction from MSU is. We do have an unbiased perspective. I will say, I have not bucked where I'm at, and my record prediction is not like anything crazy for State this year. So I like to think I can be a little bit unbiased on this, even though I'm going to rant about Devon Booth and being picked behind a guy who transferred out of Mississippi State, Xavier Thomas. But it could go wrong with the 5 guys. We kind of saw it I was going to say we saw it last year. Luke Work ended up performing better than McKylan Pounders at tackle did. But at the same time, Luke Work is a true freshman starting out his college career. I don't know how realistic it is that he was going to step in and start for state right away. It was kind of it could have easily been a deal where just as the season progressed, you saw him start to get better and better. And Pounders, I think, was sick the first game that he missed. Work stepped in. It's like, all right, well, now Luke Work is going to kind of be the guy. They have to find the 5 guys for sure. But I keep saying they've given themselves options. I am optimistic that it's got to be better purely off the fact that I just don't see how it could be worse. It's kind of where I'm at with it. But if they are considerably better, then you're talking about an offense that's going to be really, really exciting this coming year.
For sure. And I think they have to be comfortable in the fact that they have that offensive line depth and that there's not a set 5 guys. Like they have to be happy about that because like, okay, we don't have like 5 guys and then the rest of y'all. It's everyone's competing. Everyone's going to get an opportunity. Do you rotate guys throughout the season and just kind of see how it all plays out? And you're just as a unit, you're either going to have success or non-successful plays. I think that's what State's got to be happy about this year.
Having the ability to rotate bodies is big. It helps out. You're going to be able to practice. It obviously helps keeping guys fresh in games. That's going to be huge. Mm-hmm. They still definitely need 5 guys to emerge, and I think they're hoping that gets settled in within these coming days or coming practices that you start to emerge. Okay, these are the 5 guys that we feel most comfortable about. But to your point, having the ability to rotate bodies, having several guys who can play multiple spots is going to be big because it's interesting. For as much as MSU struggled up front last year, it was not because of injury. I went into last season thinking, I'd sold myself to that offensive line because on paper, none of those transfers looked bad. I was like, okay, these 5 guys should come together and be a solid offensive line. My concern was after the top 5, I don't think they have anything. And if anybody gets hurt, they're probably in trouble. And it turned out that they stayed healthy throughout the year. McKylan Pounders missed a game because he got sick, but they stayed healthy throughout the season. Like really none. I think Cannon Boone as a backup got hurt, but the starting group stayed healthy. The problem is the starting group just ended up not being that good. So you go to this year, but realistically, offensive line is one of those spots you're going to have injuries. So you go into this year, you should be able to withstand if you do have injuries. In theory, we've got more guys who can step in and play. They still got to find the guys, though, that they can definitely lean on. But so that's going to be the big thing to watch. But I think they've improved. I think every position group on offense, I think quarterback room is stronger. I think running back room is stronger. I think wide receiver room is deeper. I don't want to say it's better yet because we still have to kind of see from those guys, but they're at least deeper. Offensive line looks like they have upgraded. So I think they're better across the board.
Yeah.
Going in now, we're going to talk about things that we are concerned with, things that we are optimistic about, and then things that we just kind of have a question for State offensively. Christian, I think you've kind of already told us your big concern for this team. Offensively.
Yeah. Offensively, I guess it's, my biggest thing is how good enough is Phil Lodeholt going to be for the offensive line? Is he going to be the guy that can get this? And you pretty much answered it, and it answers my questions. But it's still something we have to see to believe this season. It's just that consistency on the O line, getting those guys ready game in and game out. That's just what I want to see, man. Because if they step it up, if they block right, you open up the run game, you open up the passing game for Shapen, you keep him healthy. I'm not going to say the sky's the limit for Mississippi State, but I think the sky could be the limit for what they want to do offensively.
Yeah, I guess I'll go ahead and give my concern, which my concern would be the same thing. I don't think we have to find. I don't think we have to find a different one for each part of this. My concern is definitely offensive line. Just does that group not take the step forward that you're hoping for? And if that happens again, it's going to be tough to build the offense out. But I feel the way I see it is that by the end of last season, they found an offense that was able to do just enough with an offensive line that on paper is worse than this one. I feel like with everything in place this year, I have a hard time believing that they cannot be better. but definitely it's still a little bit of concern. The offensive line does really set the table for everything you're going to be able to do offensively. If that group is not taking a step forward, that's going to be a big concern. Optimism, though. What's the thing about the MSU offense that you're most optimistic in?
Like, I guess optimism is like kind of like curiosity, right? Like, or
Well, no,
most
just
excited.
the optimism is just the thing that you're excited about. Like you look at this, like
Yeah,
I
yeah,
have reason to be
yeah.
excited about.
I always get that word mixed up with something else, and I'm not sure what. Most excited. I'm excited to see these receivers, man. How do they step up? Just being a big part of college football today. Uh, I want to see these guys run. I want to see them catch. We talked about some of those transfers earlier. How do they step in? What about some of the guys that have been recruited or have been there? Is there really much leadership to help out, or is it just a fresh start for everybody in that room?
It's definitely a good reason to be excited. I think there's a lot of fun potential there, but again, the key word is potential. My excitement, it's the running back room. I
Yeah,
think that is going to be a really really fun group to watch throughout the course of the season. As I've talked, I really enjoy Devon Booth, and I think he's going to have a huge year. I love what Fluff Bothwell is able to bring. The other options you have in Johnny Daniels and Xavier Gaden are both very exciting. That is a group State can build around offensively. I would love to see Levy, get multiple of those guys in the field at the same time. That's not something he's done a lot of throughout his career. Um, when he has done two back sets, a lot of times he puts a receiver in the backfield, and it's kind of just to create a matchup and also be for a tempo reason to not change personnel. But man, I kind of look at it like I think it'd be a lot of fun to have Devon Booth and Fluff Bothwell on the field at the same time, or Devon Booth and Xavier Gaden with what they're able to both bring from an explosive standpoint and a player out of the backfield standpoint. What can those guys, the different ways those guys can play? I think you've got to find ways to get those guys in the field. And I'll be really interested to see the packages he's able to make offensively for that. What's the thing as an offense that you just kind of have a question about? It's not necessarily concern, not necessarily optimism, but it's just what are the things that we're sort of wait and see for this offense?
Mm, first thing that comes to mind is consistency. Do they consistently have successful plays down the field, convert third downs into first downs, or just get big yardage? A big play every once in a while is awesome to see, but I just want to see it be consistent this year, man. I don't want to see this whole, hey, he overthrew a receiver. Oh, look, a big play. Hey, he overthrew him. Oh, look, a big play. Like, just consistency, good play over the middle, big play downfield, hand it off, big chunky yardage for the running back. However it looks like how they're going to run their offense, I hope there's consistency with it. And that way you can also create good chemistry with these guys and they can trust each other enough to go out and play some good football.
That's honestly a big one for sure, because you didn't have it a year ago. Last season, they
Right.
were not consistent on a play-by-play basis. Um, they couldn't consistently move the football the way that you needed them to. They had to hit big plays to score points. If
Right.
if you went back and looked, nearly every time Mississippi State put points on the board, it was because they hit an explosive play. And part of that is just that's what this offense does. It's designed to hit the big plays, and they want to try to hit the big plays. Part of that is because they just didn't have the ability to do anything else. This was not an
Mhm.
offense that was able to go and get 5, 6, 7 yards at a time. Can you have that consistency? That is definitely a huge thing for me. I agree with you there. The other thing for me, and I hit on it earlier when we were talking about the receivers and tight end for that matter, because it factors in as well. Do you have that player who is your consistent go-to guy when we have to
Nice.
have a conversion? Do you have that
Yeah.
guy in the room? I'm not concerned about having guys who can win deep down the field. I'm not concerned about guys who you can get the ball to in space and they can make plays. They have that. Do you have a guy that when it is 3rd and 10 and we need a conversion, he's going to get open, he's going to catch the football and convert for you? That's the question for me with the state receiving core. Um, and look, you help yourself by not putting yourself in many situations where you have to do that. Last year, they were in a lot of those spots, and they really didn't do all that well in them. But luckily for them, they had a player in Kevin Coleman who could step up those roles. Do you have that piece this year? That is the biggest question when you talk about the state offense for me. you know, if the offensive line takes a step forward, I think they've got good skill talent, know enough. Like, I think this group can be pretty good. But yeah, finding that guy to be the consistent chain mover will be a big part of it. Just close out here. I
Yeah.
mean, overall expectations for the Bulldog offense. What are your thoughts? We don't have to go like stat predictions or anything. We might do that when
Oh
we do
yeah.
our big preview show. But what are we
Yeah.
thinking from this unit this season?
I think every group has to take a step forward, and I have a gut feeling it will. I don't know how much of a step forward. I don't know if it's small or big. I don't know what it's going to do, but I definitely could see a lot of improvement. Um, and again, we talk every week about, as long as Shapen is healthy too, then, he's their leader. He's their go-to guy. And you got to be comfortable with the guys behind him if he can't go. I I just want to see it step up in big ways, be consistent, and overall my thoughts are that I think they will. And if I'm wrong, I will come on here and let everyone poke fun at me. I don't know.
I'm kind of in agreement. I think this offense is going to be pretty good. I am bought in that they are going to be the type of offense that I think a lot of fans were hoping for last season,
Right.
and I think it'll give you the type of season you were hoping for a year ago, where regardless of what's happening on defense, we have an offense that can give us a chance in games and will be good enough to be able to spring a win somewhere. Um, I do think they will be better up front. And look, a lot of this hinges on O line, but I think even if the offensive line's not great again, because of everything else, I think you could still be better as well. I think at a minimum, this should be a serviceable to good offense. I think they will be able to run the ball effectively. I think Shapen at quarterback lets them do more in the passing game, and with the receivers they have, again, at a bare minimum, they have guys who can handle the roles that they need them to handle. I just think that this is going to be a much better group all around. They got to get better about protecting
Yeah.
the quarterback for sure. I forgot to talk about this offensive line. I mean, sack rate last year was over 9%, which was the worst that Levy has had for any team in his time as an offensive coordinator. That's pretty terrible. It was 118th in the country. That's got to improve by multiple percentage points if we're going to be talking about State getting to a point where they're able to more consistently move the football the way they need to. But that's the other thing is I don't think they're going to be as big play dependent. I do think because of what they're going to be able to do on the ground, because of what Shapen offers in the short to intermediate passing game, they can move the ball more consistently play by play. And this is not going to be a team that like we just have to hit big plays to score. So I'm really excited for the what this offense can ultimately be. And I think this is going to be a fun group to watch. I think Mississippi State fans are going to get an offense that they can go into every single week excited to watch them play. And if
Right.
nothing else for the team, that's big for this program.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited for the season, man, and this was a really good preview we did, I think.
Yeah, a ton of fun breaking down the offense. And next week we're going to be back to talk about defense. But this is not going to be the only time. It shouldn't be the only time you see this podcast this week. Gonna try to do another pod later in the week. Want to start talking about Mississippi State's non-conference opponents as we start to break into the schedule. So I know we're kind of going back and forth between talking about Mississippi State and then talking about State's opponents, but it's sort of the way that's going to work best for us schedule-wise. So I'm planning later in the week to be back to doing another pod because we would like to get this thing to 2 shows during the week throughout the preseason
Yeah.
as we get this thing built up. But yeah, a ton of fun talking the offense today. And yeah, glad to have those of you who tuned in. Appreciate it. Levy Nader Jr., thanks so much for your comments. I really appreciate that and giving us a little bit of interaction throughout the show. It's great. But yeah, this was a ton of fun and look forward to doing it again later.
Yeah, and again, Andrew, I'll keep in touch with you just to let people know I am moving back to Florida to be with my parents this week. So I'll keep in touch and let you know if I can join you on that show. If not, I should be here next Monday. We will see. That's a question mark there because I'm still trying to figure out with the new job and stuff.
Yeah. Well, hey, if it's another solo show, I'm ready to go. And if we have Christian, then we'll be able to have a little bit more conversation back and forth throughout.
Awesome.
But yeah, I think we're good to go.
Awesome. Thanks, man. thank you guys for watching. We love you, and we'll see you next time.
Adios.